Hello students, in the previous set of notes we went through this lesson right here where we talked about an introduction to algebraic expressions, and then we started talking about adding and subtracting like terms. And I gave you a few questions here. So let's see. What I'm going to start with is actually this final cue right here. I do want to go over it and give you a little bit of an answer, or just the answer, and how to go about it. And that's what we're going to focus on today. So I intentionally gave you a little bit of a trickier question here, but just know that this level of trickiness is something that you're going to have to get used to. All right. So what to do here is I'm going to move this instructions for the try questions just off to the side so you could see this a little bit better. And let's focus on this. All right, so we talked about like terms, and the first thing that you have to do is you have to group like terms, because we said that you can combine all these different letters together, right? Or not the different ones, but the similar ones. You could combine the similar ones. So let's say, usually what I would do is this. It takes a little bit of scanning, but I usually scan from left to right, and I start with one variable at a time. So I have 2x. I see that there's an x there, and what I like to do is, especially when I first learned this, and I highly recommend that you do it, is I just either cross it off or I underline any like term. So I start with the x, and I go, okay, 2x, and then plus 3y, not an x, plus 4x, which is an x right there, plus 3, plus 2y, plus 1. So the only two variables that I have are the x's right here. So I have 2x plus 4x. And I know that I can add them together. But usually I wouldn't even be too hasty about it. I would actually go and look for all the other variables first and then put them in order. So the next one right here is 3y, and it's plus 3y. So then I'm going to add that. And then let me look for another y first. Oh, right here, plus 2y. So then plus 2y. And then finally, I have, let's use a different color just to really drive this point home. So plus 3, and then plus 1. Now, keep in mind that whenever I'm rearranging these numbers, the symbol in front of the letters or the numbers, the variables, the values, they must follow it. In this case, it's all pluses, so it's pretty straightforward and easy. But when you start getting the minuses, be careful, because you need to remember which one you're going to be minusing, all right? We'll get into that later. So let's start with the 2x plus 4x. 2 plus 4 is 6, and I'm left with the x. Do not change the letter x. It is similar to, like we said, apples, right? So 2 apples plus 4 apples is 6 apples, not apples squared or anything fancy like that. All right, so then the next one right here is 3y plus 2y. I'm going to change the color there a little bit. So 3y plus 2y, and that is going to be plus 5y. And then finally, plus 3 plus 1, that is going to be plus 4. And that is my final answer there. So I'm going to have 6x plus 5y plus 4. Now, how you put the letters is up to you. It doesn't matter. There won't be any right or wrong order to this. But usually people like to do it in alphabetical order, and I highly recommend that. It makes the answers a little bit easier to spot. Okay, this leads into our next section here. And so this is performing complex calculations. All right. So when it comes to performing complex calculations, there are just a few more rules to follow as well. But we actually did already one of them. And so that is, let's do this. Solve the equation or solve the expression all right, one variable at a time. And let's just add when adding or subtracting, because it does change a little bit later on down the line. But right now, we're just going to focus on adding or subtracting. Add the line there. There we go. Okay, and at the end, when you're done, put your variables next to each other. All right, so I'm gonna use another example here, and let's write this down here. Example. Okay, so we're gonna do one more of these, but this time I'm gonna also add a little bit of a twist. I'm going to add a couple of decimal points as well just to get started, all right? And a couple of different symbols too. So let's try something like 2x plus 3y minus 4x. All right, so no decimals quite yet, but I'm adding a kind of two variables here. And if you see, there's actually an integer as well. All right, so how do I do this? I start by expressing the expression one, or figure out the expression one variable at a time. So I'm going to start with the letter x. And so then I'm going to rewrite. I like rewriting everything to x like that, because then it helps me just sort everything out and make sure I don't miss anything. So then I'm going to underline the next x that I see, which is negative or minus 4x. Now be careful, that minus has to follow it. The minus in front must follow. And anything that doesn't have a minus or a plus in front of it means that it's just simply an addition question. All right? So then I already have that, and I'm going to use a different color, and then I'm going to say plus 3y. Now you see that there's nothing, like no other y's, so I'm pretty much done with that. And I don't need to add anything there, so I don't need to work on that number, but I do have to work on the 2x minus 4x. But let's try to answer this. And again, we're going to treat the x's like they're just variables, so you could ignore them for the time being. But pretty much remember that you're going to have to add it back together, right? So another way to look at it is you actually have 2 minus 4, and then later at the end you have to put the x back. Okay, so let's try to answer this first. What is 2 minus 4? 2 minus 4 is the same as 2 plus and negative 4, right? We want to turn into the addition, so we know now that 2 plus negative 4 is then going to be negative 2, because it is 4 minus 2, and the negative is a bigger number, and that's it. So then, to give my final answer for this, I have the 2, and I have the x right there. So I'm left with 2x, or oops, negative 2x. All right, so it's negative 2x, and now I got to put this back and replace this number right here. Kind of looks a little bit trickier and messier, but it kind of works, right? And then, so then I'm left with negative 2x plus 3y. And that is it. Now, sometimes people like to move this around. I know some people don't like to have the negative in front. I usually just ignore it by then, because then you might make some mistakes, and you don't want to make mistakes when you're shifting numbers around. But you definitely can turn this into another answer, which is 3y minus 2x. That is okay, but I'm not going to write that down, just so that in case it's a little bit confusing, I don't want to add some confusion. Okay, so you see that really what this is just trying to put two questions in one, because now I could have a set of expressions that you need to work on, right, with one variable, and then I have another set of letters. And so if I had something accompanying the y's, then you see that you would have another like set of equations that you need to work on. With these questions, don't see these numbers as tricky numbers. You have proven in your last test that you know how to solve these. It is just taking the time to make sure that you're careful. So really the name of the game here is being careful, not about being able to perform amazing calculations. That's not it. If you're careless, it is going to get you, all right? If you're careful, even if you're not the strongest, fastest mathematician, you will still be able to answer everything just fine. All right, so let's do one more example. This time we're going to add decimals. So we're going to say 2.4, and we're going to still stick with the letter x because it's just a little bit nicer, plus 3y minus 4y plus 2.1x plus 3. All right. Once again, name of the game is being slow and careful. I'm going to start with the first variable that I have, and a lot of rewriting actually. 2.4x right there. Now, I'm going to look for the other x's first. So I'm going to ignore all the y's, and I'm going to jump to this one right here, which is plus 2.1x. All right, then I have no more x's, so I'm done. Now I'm going to go to the next one, which is plus 3y minus 4y right there. And then I'm going to go with the final number here, and I'm just going to use the color black right here, and then plus 3. All right, so I have my 3 things that I'm going to work on. I'm going to start with this one right here. So what is 2.4 plus 2.1? Well, I don't think I even need to work too hard on that. The answer is, if I want to make it proper though, let's do it. 2.1 right there plus 4.5. So the answer for this one is 4.5x. Oh, I would highly recommend, if you do extra work, maybe this time you could do it on the sides as well, so a little bit further than how I did it. That way you could write all the final equation pieces at the bottom later, right? So plus, now we have 3y minus 4y. So 3 minus 4 is the same as 3 plus negative 4. And you see that they're opposites. The bigger one is the 4, so 4 minus 3 is 1. But then the negative sign is the winner, so negative 1. So then in this case, what do I do here? There's several ways. But I would actually just change that to minus, because it's negative. Negative 1y or negative y. All right, so it's... Now, another way to write it is you could say add, like we did, and then plus negative 1y. That would actually not be wrong at all. Like, you would be totally fine writing that. But if you want to add a little bit of sophistication to it, then you would just turn it into negative y or minus y. And therefore, you are left with 4.5x minus y plus 3. And that is your answer. Okay? So for your assignment, for what you need to work on, you're just going to work on a few try and practice questions. If you didn't finish your independent practice from the previous day, then please go ahead and add some of those as well. But when you're done with doing this, then you could go ahead and work on some of the assigned try questions too. And then you'll do some more independent practice when we're in class. All right, that is it for this lesson.